As I've evolved from my humble beginnings, I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of rooms. The more people I've met, the more stories I've learned. Stories of passion, trauma, triumph, and resilience. These are the stories that inspire us, that remind us of the human spirit. We can all learn from the untold stories in each of us, regardless of where you come from. And now, I'm excited to share these stories with you. This is EPEC Conversations. To EPEC Conversations, where we talk to everyday people navigating extraordinary circumstances. We're telling human stories of passion, trauma, triumph, and resilience. And this month, it's October 1st, and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so many people in my world have been impacted by breast cancer. Most immediately, my mother is a breast cancer survivor. But I also have, yes, clap it up for her. I also have several friends and colleagues who have also been impacted by breast cancer, many of whom I get the first window of insight into their lives by talking to them about their stories. So many women who are Black women or women of color. And so I'm spending a good number of my interviews, a good portion of my time this month, really uncovering those stories and these experiences from the Black woman's perspective. And so today we have a really exciting episode with one of my dear sister friends who I love and adore. Y'all, Margaret Gregory is a school leader, an educator, a sister, a shero in her own family, first generation cycle breaker is what I like to call these folks, homeowner, soon to be business owner. She's on the circuit. She's talking on podcasts. She's leading schools, a turnaround school specifically. And it's really, really just shown us the true definition of a survivor, of somebody who was resilient. So to be able to have the kind of career you've been able to have and build the kind of support you've been able to build in your life and in your circle of support, given this battle that you've had to bear, is incredible. It's inspiring, and I'm so excited to have you. So welcome, Margaret Gregory.
All right. I appreciate this opportunity just to be in fellowship with you, Dal. Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Let's tell the listeners. Well, first of all, let me just start by saying it's a Sunday. It's October 1st. We're a couple days into the fall. This is a recalibration Sunday. I feel like this is a Sunday of grounding, of like a new season turning. I've been in the house all day today. I just found out I have COVID, so I am I'm sitting that ass down, baby. So I gave Margaret just a little bit. She got a lip today, a little eyebrow, a little slick back. But I'm sitting here in some shorts and a Beyonce t-shirt because it's also the last concert of the Renaissance tour tonight in Kansas City. Shout out to Beyonce, stimulating the economy, $4.5 billion of economic stimulus in this country from the Renaissance tour. Anyways, I digress. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation in this particular chapter. Margaret and I actually had this conversation several times before now. We lost an interview. So I feel like everything happens for a reason. So I'm excited for what we'll uncover in this specific conversation. So
This one's gonna be the better one. I'm convinced, and I know it will. Other one was pretty dope too. But yeah, I'm just excited to be here on this forum. I know Dell always likes to, you always have a special guest, but Dell is not a special guest. She is, the leader of this work, and just giving and creating a forum for folks to be able to share their stories, to impact lives of whoever will come into contact with these videos that are going to be, here for a lifetime. So just thank you for creating that time, that space for little girls like me to share their story, to impact, someone else. I appreciate
Ashe, sis. Let's talk about, for people who don't know us, how do we know each other?
it. We went to the Bennett College, right? The best HBCU, first college for all women. I always tell people when they ask me what school, because they always give me that look and be like, "What Bennett?" I always have to let them know we're the
Mhm.
first.
The oldest
Spelman
historical.
get the Spelman get the little clout because they got the Rockefeller big business gurus, donating and as a consistent philanthropist to them. But we are just homegrown, right? We are authentic to ourselves, and it's a true sisterhood. And all of the friends that I have in my dear life that are really close to me are all Bennett Bells. And I really wanted to go to Spelman, I'm gonna tell you, but I don't know what happened, why I did not go because I don't even think I applied. But all my life I thought I wanted to go to Spelman, but Bennett was what I needed, and
Yeah.
I will never take it back.
Yeah, I love Bennett College, you know what I'm saying? And Spelman College too. Love to our Spelman sisters too,
No, I ain't
what's
saying
all
all
love.
that.
We do, she said, we ain't said all that. We do a lot of this, it kind of reminds me of like, upstate New York in the city, or like,
Mhm.
the Bay in LA, or, Chicago in the suburbs. It's kind of like that, kind of, that
Rivalry.
friendly rivalry, is what we'll call it. So yeah, love to the Spelman Knights as well. But no,
Yeah,
Bennett.
love you all, but y'all know. Every time I see some friends, I'll be like, "Oh, you from Spelman?" But it is true love, and it's a true sisterhood. And only a women's college will know what it took to graduate and
It's
to
like
be.
a game recognized game kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
Just the cultures are very different. But what's understood don't got to be explained about the black female collegiate experience. A lot of parallels between the two. But yeah, the rivalry is definitely there. But yeah, so that's where I met you. Um, and one of the things that I really appreciate about Margaret never really took the experience that I have with you. And Maggie doesn't take things too seriously, and she always had a very like realist point of view. You know what I'm saying? Like, if people might be really giddy or bubbly or excited about something that might have some holes in it, you might have the people who are like the pure pessimists, and you'll come in kind of leading with a pessimist view at first, but then end it on this high note. Like, I don't know about all that shit, but I mean, maybe it could work out, Maybe it could. And like, I just felt like I came in as an underclassman under you, and I always appreciated your candor and your sense of humor with whatever the situation was. And so we were in the same department, and that's how we got connected. I really don't know how we got close though, but
I don't remember either. I don't remember either. But what is funny is that even the fact that I could have sworn I knew you, right? But I think I watched a video that you just had posted, not you recently, but you had posted on your social media page, and was just listening to the things that you experienced to get to Bennett, right? And I was like, dang, I didn't know all that. Dang, I didn't know all that, and thinking and not knowing anything about you. But what I find to be so pure and so refreshing is that despite all the challenges that you've experienced in getting to Bennett, right? I it wasn't anything I could tell just by knowing you and getting to know you, but just seeing the qualities of a leader. And so where you are right now, it's no surprise. But when I actually sit down and I listen, I know the high level overview of your life. But when you think about the nitty gritty and, the small things that really made your time at Bennett worthwhile, it was like, dang, this girl powerful.
oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of that stuff, like, I'm starting to become more aware of in this chapter of my life for sure. Like, I'm starting to really like hyper focus on what was actually happening, because in the moment I'm just getting through it. You know what I'm saying? With no, like, I'm on a mission. You know what I'm saying? And so now though that I've had time to, like, there's time behind us. We're in our 10-year reunion, class of 2013. um I've had like multiple careers now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've done I've been a full-time student. And so I think all of these accumulating kind of chapters, shifts in my relationships with friends, with family, new boundaries that I'm setting and establishing, really wrestling with like how not to like damper out love in you, in your heart and your spirit when hard shit happens to you. Like, all of that kind of reconciliation internally after turning 30, I think has me looking back at my life and the accumulation of events in a different way. So I've been trying to be more intentional about sharing different elements too. Because I don't think about it in a big way, but the more I share, the feedback I get that like people actually they value, like they need those details to kind of
Mhm.
make sense of whatever their journey is too. So I definitely appreciate you for sharing that back.
Agree, the details are the most important part, right? I think sometimes we try to omit some details,
Hmm.
but the details is what makes the story. So
Yeah, and for somebody like me, like a big part of my childhood has been like really moving through the details really fast because I don't have enough time to explain to somebody what the fuck is really going on, you know, or if
that's
I do, I don't know
right.
what the
Mhm.
aftercare experience is gonna be like. Are you gonna hold it? Are you gonna empathize? Is it just like I just opened up and now, like, you know? So all of that, like, you just get in the habit of moving and protecting whatever it is that you have.
Mhm.
And so even the thought of like sharing more is a I have a new understanding about the importance of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And then thinking about details, we're gonna get into these details.
I'm ready.
Uh, you are a breast cancer survivor. Um, you are a young black woman, not yet 40. How old are you now?
Do I tell people online? No, I just turned 34 in July.
You're 34.
Yeah,
And when did you when were you diagnosed with breast cancer? How
I'm
old are you?
31, 31.
31.
I
So
just turned 31.
my age literally right now.
Mhm.
And at the time that you were diagnosed with breast cancer, there had been at least one other person, maybe two people in the Bennett community. I could think of one other person who was also young,
Mhm.
maybe two, yeah, a couple folks, um, and also had breast cancer. And I feel like those incidents were like kind of rocked the Bennett community because at Bennett College, we talk a lot about Black women's issues, and this just kind of, for whatever reason, feels like we missed it, you know. And
Mm.
then it started happening to our sisters. So, talk to me about the when your diagnosis, when you were diagnosed, what was going on in your life at the time, and what happened when you found out you were diagnosed with breast cancer. What did that look like for you?
I think if I tell you the story, right, it'll sound odd, but I was on the phone with my big sister from Bennett College, right? And I had like big boobs. I was like a double D. Blaine Bryant called me an M, and I was like, that's disrespectful. So I'm disregarding Bryant. But I was like probably like a double D at the time. And I was on FaceTime with her. I was laying down on my bed, and I was laying on my stomach, and I felt something weird on my chest when I moved. And then I got up and I went into my dining room and I just put my hand across my right breast, and I felt a lump. And on the phone, I didn't say anything about what I just felt. I continued that conversation, or I proceeded, and then I proceeded to get on WebMD, trying to identify what this lump meant. Searched in my left breast, didn't feel anything different, didn't feel a lump. And I think I sat with that lump in my chest without telling anybody for about a month. Um,
Mm,
and it was in the middle of COVID, so it was the middle of like call your appointments are on over the phone online. And so I remember I was going to a little rinky dink community center, healthcare center, and I called them, and it was like on my birthday. It was actually on my birthday when I called them, and they were like, "Oh no, this what happens during your menstrual cycle. Don't worry about it." And I felt okay at that moment, but that lump was still there, right after my menstrual cycle had come and had gone. Um, and then a friend of mine at the time was like, "No, Margaret, you got to go to the hospital." And so I went to the emergency room. And everything after that went really quickly. I went to the emergency room. They thought it was a cyst. I remember when I was getting I was getting scanned. It was like an ultrasound where they put some gel on your chest and they move it around.
yeah,
Um, and the radiologist came in and was like, did you find, I asked the technician, like, did you find the cyst? And the girl said, "It is not a cyst." And in that moment is when I began to bawl, right? I began to bawl. And even in COVID, the young lady, another black girl, like she embraced me. And I really want to know who that girl is because in that moment, I don't think I knew what I was getting into. I didn't know what was going to happen. But sometimes you feel like you are invincible. You feel like those certain things can't happen to you. So a lot of the fact that when I found out that it was actually cancer, it was a little bit unbelievable because people don't really tell you that you may get sick. After you experience poverty, you're the first in your family to do all these things. You think you are kind of like superwoman, incredible, right? You can't do certain things; just won't happen to you because you on this trajectory to be great. Um, and when I was diagnosed, I had just got appointed to be the principal of the charter school I had just left. Um, and it was kind of like disheartening to the point where I was a little angry. Like here I am on the brink of like success, quote unquote success, right? I'm dealing with a significant illness and I don't know what my fate will be. Um, but that's what happened. So really after I found out it was cancer, about a week later, we did a whole bunch of tests. Found out about fibroids that I had, right? Found out about the possibility of me not being able to have children for a certain period of time. And currently where I am right now, I am menopausal, so I can't have children. I don't have my periods, and I get hot flashes.
Hmm.
It's lit over here, literally and figuratively.
You were crazy. I
Ah,
guess you laugh to keep from crying, right? Like that's a lot.
man, when I tell you, like tomorrow, I have an appointment, right? I have to do my get a Lupron shot right in the side of my behind, and I get that every 4 weeks. That's to continue to have the hot flashes. We'll get into it, but I have I had two different types of breast cancer. One was ER positive, so estrogen receptive or receptor positive, which ultimately just means that my body produces too much estrogen. And then the other breast, I had HER2 positive. It's one of the most common types of breast cancer a woman can get, and I want to say quote unquote the easiest to actually to resolve, but that's me speaking, quite frankly. But um, I think I said this in the last interview that we had, that breast cancer is kind of like one of the best cancers to have. And I say that, and I know people look at me or I'll say, like, girl, you sound crazy. But there's so much research, there's so many resources for women who are battling breast cancer. It's all dependent on when they find it. And if it's reached stage 4, that just means that the cancer has gone to different organs of that person's body, and so the fight
It's
to remain
metastasized.
alive is a little bit, yes, it's metastasized. But that's it. Got my breast cancer. You see it?
I love that. Yeah, so I just to give people some context, I took the liberty of jotting down just a couple of facts that I think are important for listeners. Among women younger than 40, breast cancer incidence is higher among African American women than among white women and every other racial demographic. A U.S. woman's lifetime risk of breast cancer is 1 in 8. In African American women, have a 40% cancer mortality rate, the highest of any U.S. racial or ethnic group. Breast cancer is also the leading cause of cancer death for Black women. And Black women who have used, I found this to be really, really interesting and important, especially given our history and interest and experience with cosmetics and specifically around hair. Black women who have used hair dye at least every 5 to 8 weeks had a 60% higher breast cancer risk, which is really interesting to think about. So if you're listening to this or watching this, this is something that is if you are identified as a Black American woman, we are disproportionately impacted by breast cancer. So it's really important to talk about it. And I think for me, as somebody who even has a mother who has beat breast cancer, like so much of that experience she didn't share with me directly because of her own shame around it or feeling like She didn't want to scare the family. So she dealt with that, a lot of that, like by herself. She was active about not including us in that process. And you know, we have more conversations to be had around that, but I think it's important to highlight that, you know, it is important to seek that community, because the experience of navigating cancer in general can be a very lonely experience. But also, um you know, I think that when we think about breast cancer, we think breast cancer as like a single kind of cancer. We don't think about the layers that go into having two different breast cancer types, or what the impact of having a different medication assigned to certain strands are. You know, like maybe the strand that I have, it's more aggressive than another. Like there are so many layers to breast cancer that I learned through talking to you. So what did you have to learn through the process, or what did your family have to learn as you were discovering more about the kind of breast cancer treatment that you would need?
Mm, I think that's I think it's a really great question. I think when I hear the stats, when I hear about the 40% mortality rate of Black women who don't survive this, I think about, and I always say like the HER2 positive cancer is like the one of the most common, but then my ER cancer is actually one of the most aggressive. And like I sit here, and when you were talking, it was kind of like I was reminded, and it was like, dang, Margaret, you went through some things. I think about, first of all, having two different breast cancers. It's like, what you mean I got two different breast? You know what I mean? Like it was like, what? I just have cancer, right? But no, not understanding what those implications are, right? There was a lot of things that, you know, initially when I was presented with, you 31-year-old have breast cancer. My thing was like, what can I do to hurry up and get over with this situation, with this whole process? And that was the most ignorant thing that I could ever do, right? Because not understanding fully of what it means to be a survivor of a person who had breast cancer, and then to actually go through life post cancer, right? And so treatment, I was in treatment for, it was August 2020. August 2020. I was in it. My last round of treatment was April 11th, 2022. The first year, I was every Monday going for treatment. The first year. And the first half of that year, I was going to treatment for one of the types of breast cancer that I had. That was the most common. The second half is when I lost my eyebrows, my eyelashes, the little bit of hair that I had on my head is when I went, it was, I was just bald everywhere on my face. Um, that I felt like was the most, it was the most difficult time, because it was actually the time where I looked like I was sick. I think when I was undergoing the other treatment, yeah, I was losing some hair, but my eyebrows were still intact. My haircut was already low. And so people didn't really understand what was going on. But when I had to look like I had cancer, that was the part where I think it I lost a great sense of self-esteem. Eyelashes gone. And that's like the surface level, the quick shift of how I had to acclimate to my new fate, right? And it was just, I don't know, it was actually really difficult. And I was thinking, like, before, like, preparing and thinking about, like, you know, what was my trajectory? What was the experience that I had with cancer? And I have an overall positive, but I don't wanna say that I've been positive the whole time. I would actually be lying. I think for me, I had cancer, I had a relationship, I had a job where I just got a new role, and the one thing that I needed to focus on was my health, and those were the things that I didn't focus on. Um, and I think I had to force myself to actually care about what was actually happening with my body. And it sounds insane. It sounds like, girl, why you wasn't caring about yourself? But it's so hard. Even in the fact with the whole month, I waited for a lump in in my breast, right? And we know the signs, you know, feel your breasts in the shower. We know it, but in my head to think like, nah, I don't got no cancer. I'm 31. Um, nobody in my family has cancer, so where is this coming from? But since, coming out with my story, I have met several women who and students actually who have experienced not breast cancer, but the different types of cancer. Um, and I'm a person who, I'll tell them, I said, hey, if you go to the doctor and everybody look like you, go to a new doctor, go to a new hospital. We're in Massachusetts. We're in one of the best states to be sick, with the greatest healthcare, with the best doctors. Don't go to a place that's local. Because just my experience when the lady told me, my doctor, she was my doctor. I probably only saw her never, right? Never knew who she was. And so we didn't have a relationship because also we can talk about how often do we go to see our PCP every year? I wasn't that person, right? I went to the doctor when I was sick, right? I went when I was like, what's going on with my body? But not on a consistent basis to be more proactive than versus being reactive. And so one thing I do, like right before I got on this call, I was like, I haven't seen my PCP since last year. Let me go set up my interview, my not my interview, but my appointment with my doctor. Cause I was like, I really want to continue to honor, my health. And sometimes I forget to remember, right? Sometimes it's things go so fast. I'm back at work. I'm healthy, got my eyebrows, got my eyelashes back, so I'm good. But I forget to remember what I just went through. And so there's certain things that I have to continue to work towards and to put into my practice, to implement to my everyday life to say, these are the things I care about. How do I show up for myself each day, each week, each month, each year? What do I eat? What do I put in my body? And sometimes, you want to go back, but then other times is at what expense. So I'm always cognizant of that.
I'm wondering okay, so when you found out you had cancer, well, actually, I think you left off at the part where you started crying before they even told you you had cancer. You just
Hmm.
wasn't a cyst, and that to you was was your own confirmation that it possibly could have been cancer. So what happened? So what was the process of getting notified after that examination?
So after that, I think they call it what do they call it? They call it women do it when they're pregnant. When you do I
A
forget
breast
the
examination?
not the scan, but when they go to see, when they put
Ultrasound.
the ultrasound, that's the word. So, so I did the ultrasound, but the ultrasound, confirmed that it wasn't a cyst. However, I needed to know if it was cancer and then normally what type of cancer. And so I had to get a breast autopsy, not an autopsy, but a biopsy. Um, and so, given the fact that I was allergic to lidocaine, so it didn't happen on that same day. So I went back a couple of days later, had a breast biopsy, and you know, the doctor said to me when everything was over, it was like, Dana Farber's right across the street, and you know, that was the one thing that was most salient in that appointment. It was like, well, why would she say Dana Farber is right across the street. You know what I mean? And so doctors know before
And
they
Dana
before
Farber
they
is what?
Dana Farber is a cancer institute. They specialize in all types of cancer. I don't want to say it was founded in Massachusetts, but I don't know if it's anywhere else. So the one site that we had now, there's a second site and a second facility that I also go to now. But I went to Brigham and Women's Hospital, and right across is like a whole trifecta of hospitals that all connect and collaborate to support their patients. So Dana Farber is a cancer institute that specializes in all types of cancer. And so found out I had cancer. It probably took me about a week to find out. I remember I was calling them asking for my results, and they were like, "It's not there yet. It's not ready yet." And then I got the call. I got the call August 12th. And August 12th is always a day that August 12th is just an important date for me. It was the day in which I found out that, my childhood friend was murdered and killed. It was also her father's birthday. And so to get that news on that day for me was like, what's going on? And I also remember that when I went for the biopsy that day, there was a person who was, checking in and had the same birthday of my cousin who died August 12th. So it was like the weird connections, weird things. But those are the things that are also most prevalent in my mind when I think about, me finding out and going through this cancer process. And so I found out, I cried on the phone, right? I think initially my initially my reaction to potentially having cancer was not to tell anybody, right? I think on my birthday, my ex, I we had went out and I looked at her and I was like, there's a lump on my breast. And so I want to say I found out about my cancer August when I was 31, but I had breast cancer when I was 30, right? And I was like, and she was like,
You had felt that lump before.
I never felt the lump before, and as big as my boobs were laying on my chest, never felt the what I felt. And then when I had my friend feel, it was it was like, "Oh yeah, you need to go to the hospital." And so that fear came into me and I was like, "Okay." So now I went. She came with me, we did it, and we was at the hospital for the whole day. And then it was more so like, "You gotta tell your mom." No, so I told my mom, called my mom. I told, my mentor from high school, who goes to church religiously. I was like, look, this is what I'm going through. And then when I got the call, it was like, everybody just came in and rallied around me. My brother had come from New York, drove the same day. He was like, just cut off your breast, you'll be fine, right? But there's so many people think that that's what it is, and I was like, all right, cool, that's what it is. But when someone tells you have to get rid of your breast in order to survive, it's kind of like these are the things that I know about myself. And so it's like going to get a mastectomy or preparing for a mastectomy, a double mastectomy at that. It did not feel good, and then it was like, "Okay, how do I preserve, right? How do I preserve the things that I've had with me all my life?" And then it's like, "Okay, I already got a shortcut. The world in which we live right now, people are transgender. Margaret, you might be misgendered." These are the thoughts that are going through my head. And so I'm like, "Nah, I ain't gonna feel like." I think there was a lot of things sociologically in my brain that I was like, there's things that people are gonna, you know, automatically associate with me if I just say, "Hey, this is it. Move past it." And so when I had gotten my double mastectomy, I got like tissue expanders. Then I got the COVID shot,
What's a
right?
tissue expander?
Tissue expanders is just like some little plastic balls of water, saline, I don't know what is actually in it, and they put it in there, and so it would make up for the breast that I had, and so it
Okay.
wasn't like I would have,
Is it the same like an implant? Is it an implant? Is it a breast
it's
implant?
an implant, it's a breast implant, but the tissue expander over time, like, I was supposed they were supposed to inject more saline in there to make it enlarge so that however my breast looked prior to my surgery, it would feel like no change. However, that never happened. They never got to put anything in there because I, what did I happened to have an allergic reaction or I wanna say I got sick after I got my second COVID shot, to be honest with you. I had an infection. It was a staph infection, couldn't lift my left arm, so they had to remove one of the implants. So for a very long time, I called myself lopsided Becky. That's probably not the right term, but that's what I call myself, right? So I had one implant in my right breast and nothing in my left because they had to remove it due to the staph infection. And so, and so it's just like, you're getting cancer, you're getting not yet, you have cancer, you have the antidote, like you're getting healed, things are upward in your favor, but then you have a lot of I'm not gonna say malfunctions, but you have a lot of body changes. Um, and so having to get acclimated with that, having to be comfortable with that. Um, those are all things that I'm still getting comfortable with now, and so I think when I think about any relationships that I get into or anybody that I end up, paying particular interest in, I think that's the first thing I say, right? I say, "Hey, I may have cleavage, but it ain't real," you know? Um, yeah, I don't have nipples, right? So what I did do last summer, I had a deep flap surgery, and really what that surgery was, people were like, "Oh, you have a tummy tuck." Not really, but yeah, really. So it was like they took fat from my stomach, put it in my boobs. This was the most healthful way to be able to get, reconstructive surgery. Most women will do the implant, but every 10 years you have to like get them
Like
replaced.
replace, right? Yeah.
Mhm. I was like, I'm not going to the
It
hospital
feels
again.
really invasive for some women. They're like, I don't really want to
Very
go under the
invasive.
knife. Yeah.
And I realized that I'm lucky, but or I can say that I am blessed, right? Not necessarily luck, but one thing about cancer is that you can get cancer, you can get your diagnosis, right? And then the doctors will perhaps give you options depending on what hospital you go to, or you have a doctor who says this is what you're going to do to survive, right? And so my survival rate was all contingent upon me undergoing chemo. Chemo is the most toxic thing that you could put into your body. And I remember the first day that I went for chemo treatment. It was the longest day ever. I think I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I didn't leave till after 7
Did you
because
have somebody with you?
no, it was COVID. No one could be there. Um, and so a lot of this was like solo dolo, but I had people pick me up. Um, but no, I had to be there by myself. And so it was the longest day. But a lot of it is like they want to make sure that your body can take
What's
the
about
the
to come down?
it's
Yeah.
about to come into your body
Yeah.
and give you a Benadryl shot and then they just watch you. They watch you. And the first day was my long day, quote unquote. 'Cause I had long days, I had short days where I had like 3 different types of chemo treatment going through my body. Um, and so to do that for almost 2 years, it's like it's like I didn't understand how blessed I am because people can get cancer, but you don't have the capacity to fight cancer because you can't get the chemo treatment. And so the worst thing that's happening to me is my eyebrows, my eyelashes, they all gone, but I can still undergo treatment. And you know, the plan is that the goal is that when you go undergo chemo, like the tumor shrinks. And so in my right breast, where the HER2 positive, the cancer was gone by the time of mastectomy.
And the
But
HER2 positive is the cancer that's considered to be like the easiest cancer to
the
beat.
easiest cancer.
So
My
that
ER
was working
receptor,
just
yeah,
okay. That was in your right breast.
that was in my right breast. My
And the
breast
left breast, what
cancer,
was going down with that?
left breast, by the time of mastectomy, there was like a 1 centimeter left tumor there.
Okay.
And perhaps is the
Which
reason
is
as
pretty
to
good,
why
right?
it's pretty good, but the goal is to not be at nothing, right? And so the breast is gone, so the cancer is gone. But then the likelihood of it returning due to the fact that I have a gene, it's an uphill battle every day. I think I can say I'm cancer free or I'm in remission, but at any moment, depending on the type of gene that I have, cancer can come back, right?
So
And so, go ahead.
I want you to just take us to breast cancer school really quickly. So for those who don't really fully understand, how many types of breast cancer are there? Do you know?
No, but I know there's just several types of breast cancer.
Several types of breast cancer, some more aggressive than others. You can get two different types of breast cancer at one time. Can you have more than two types of breast cancer at a time?
No, like you only got two breasts,
But I'm like,
maybe.
you have
No,
another. You have more than two types in one breast. More
I
than
don't, I don't know about that, but I think that anything's possible.
okay. So then, talk to us about like what does it mean to have the gene? What's kind of like the most aggressive? Like, just kind of give us a high level overview for somebody who's maybe is either supporting somebody who has breast cancer or might be going through this for the first time
Mm.
themselves. What are the questions they should be asking?
I The questions that they should be asking. I think when I got my call August 12th, I asked would I survive. That's the first one. And the doctor, I remember her name, Dr. Portnow. She was just like, "You'll survive it. It's just gonna be a long road for you." And I cried, hung up the phone, and was mad. Right? I think about cancer. Mm, It's hard because I know that there's people that will listen to this message and be triggered because they know somebody who did not survive breast cancer, right? I know my stages were stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 3 was the most aggressive cancer. Stage 2 was the HER2 positive. Um, and so I stand before you just knowing that, girl, you probably should not have made it. Um, but I had really good treatment. I had really good doctors. I had doctors who advocated for me, and I had people who advocated for me. Right? I think you want to specialize with a person who's really great or has a proven track record of young people, young women dealing with breast cancer. I think that's one part. I had someone who advocated for the doctor that my oncologist. Um, and I think that that's important only because sometimes when you have cancer, if they treat it just like a system and it's like, okay, this is what works, but they don't think about the self-preservation of the life and the youthfulness of the patient that they're working with, then you'll just have surgeries, but then your life will be different, right? Greatly. My life is not different vastly, only the fact that I have I have hot flashes. I've been having hot flashes since 2021, since I found out about the cancer. So I'm kind of used to it right now, right? I think about how, the things that I was eating, the doctors that I was going to and I was visiting. I also went to a holistic doctor. But I also think about equity and access. Not everybody has the money to be able to purchase or to work with a holistic doctor, right? But
Comparatively
there's
speaking,
a lot
what
of
does it look like in term financially? Like if
a
I were
holistic doctor, honestly, you pay them a nice fee, probably about no more than $200. But then all the tests that they run, all the supplements that you have to take, runs you a good $300, maybe. So that's like a good $500-$600 that you have to spend in addition to your chemo treatment. My chemo treatment, when I look at my tab, when I look at my bill, on my long days, it ran about 80K one day. On my short days, 50K one day, 2 years. Copay was $50, not $50 you have to pay before your treatment, but $50 was billed to my account. Then over time, it just dwindled. Right? And so I never understood like why people gotta, create a GoFundMe, but it's so expensive because the healthcare is an industry. And so I had options. I advocated for myself and I had people who advocated for me. And so those were the things that really grounded me in that time. But man, I don't know. It wasn't a good feeling. But I can also tell you that with my holistic doctor, those sick days is like every 3 days you're sick. Yeah, I had the symptoms of, like, diarrhea. I think diarrhea was the most that I've actually struggled with. But, like, the feeling of being sick never happened. Besides, when I started to take the treatment for my ER receptor positive breast cancer, that That one, there was, like, something that was, like, stuck to my back of my arm, so it injected me 24 hours after my treatment, and those were the times where I was just like, "Okay, I need to sit down and lay down." But I was still doing my supplements on a regular basis, so not as sick, but people get sick from chemo.
and when
Fun
you say your supplements, so you were going to chemo and then after chemo going what was that aftercare process look like after you go for a chemo
after
treatment?
chemo after chemo, I just go home and rest,
Go
drink a
home and rest for how long? Like is it a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour? Like how does chemo impact the body in terms of the breaks it?
I honestly, I would tell you that I'm not the person to tell you that because I didn't really have much of an issue. I was the type of person that could go after chemo and go hang out, but everybody'd be like, "No, you just had treatment." And I would be like, "It's not okay." I mean, I'm okay. Um, because I was going to treatment probably about every 3 weeks while I was working, not last year, but the year before last. No, last year. August 2022. Yeah, April 11th, 2022. Yeah, so last year I was still or the year before. I think it was the year before. The year before, I was still sometimes I would go to work before treatment, and sometimes I would come to work after treatment. And so it didn't really it wasn't it wasn't that. And I think I give it up to my holistic doctors. I give it up to like juicing, and the way in which I was eating. So the things that, was going to restore my body and replenish my strength, those are the things that I was putting in my body at the time. And so the whole sickness, I can honestly tell you probably like once or twice. And that was when I was undergoing the most aggressive treatment. But then once I was going under the most aggressive treatment, I had reached out back to my holistic doctor to remedy any sickness I was feeling.
Okay. That's helpful. That's really helpful. And I think it's important for people to know that like no two experiences are the same. So maybe it didn't impact you in the same way that it does that chemo impacts other people. I think
Yep.
that's fine, right? This is your experience. I want to spend some time, maybe thinking about you brought up the experience of being a queer woman going through the breast cancer experience. And I want to unpack that a little bit for folks who are non-binary or gender non-conforming, and just kind of maybe share a little bit more about that experience. So as you were thinking about the prospect of having your breast be removed, can you talk to me a little bit more about what the psychological impact of that was as a queer Black woman who identifies as you're
Not a queer Black woman.
no, you're not. Okay, tell me,
I'm
tell me.
not. So I think, yeah, I was in a relationship with a young lady for a very long time. I think where I am right now, I hate being put in a box. Um, and so I'm just Margaret Gregory. That's just what I would tell you. But I think in my own right? I don't know what I don't know what prompted me to get my hair cut, right? I think I had locks. I had locks for a very long time. I had long hair, and then a few years before I had b a few years before I had been diagnosed with breast cancer, I cut my hair. I think it was probably like a year or 2, right? So I think there was preparation before preparation, right? Um, Even being bald and saying, "What, I'm about to lose all my hair that I have on my head," that was still, a traumatic experience for me. So I remember going to the barbershop and like saying, I don't know, go as low as you can. And then my haircut just being a fresh haircut for almost 7 months was amazing, right? And then when I started to lose my hair, probably about a year after I was undergoing treatment, when I started to, really focus on the breast with the most aggressive cancer. That is when it became real to me. I was always a person who wore a hat. I was always a person that always had something on their head. So it was easy for me to disguise. But in moments where, I was with family and I was transparent, I didn't look like myself. And I think that was the one of the most disparaging things. I also think about, you know, I say chemo was light, right? But I say it, but then also knowing that it impacted my body in a manner, in a way that, I developed cardiomyopathy, right? Cardiomyopathy, as my doctor said it, right? He said, "Anybody in your family just ever drop dead?" I'm looking at him like, "No, bro, I don't know nobody like that." But then just thinking about, and I would say that, and I would tell you I have great doctors, but I had a doctor who talked to me like that because my doctors needed to talk to me like that. Because I remember the last round of treatment that I had, which was like for the most aggressive cancer that I had. There was things that I had to do. I had to be a little bit more cautious. I had to take some steroids, and there were moments where I messed up on my medicine, and my doctor would come and I would tell him the story, and I would chuckle, ha ha ha, and he would look at me like, you're playing with your life, Margaret. And, but it's like being so focused on your health, and sometimes you're just like, I just don't know what's actually happening with my body. I don't know. Like the chemo was the best thing that ever happened to me, but it also jacked my body up, right? So I'm on pills for my heart. And I think recently, every 6 months or so, I go and get an echo of my heart to see if my heart is pumping at the function that it should be. And it's mild. but it could either get worse or it can get better, right? And so while I don't have any more chemo in my body, and I think one thing that actually prolonged my treatment was the fact that there was a lapse in my heart, right? My heart wasn't as strong as it was when I first started chemo. And so they had to build my heart back up by taking all this medicine. And so from a person who went to the doctor whenever she was sick, and that was an emergency room, to a person having to go to the doctor like every week, 3, 4 times a week sometimes. That whole those habits, like, they had to be cultivated. I think about even sometimes when I go get my shot in my right or my left side of my butt cheeks, like, I think there's moments where I'm really mad, and I think there's moments where I'm really grateful, right? I think about having to lean over and then talk to my doctor, and, it's just something that's mundane and happens all the time, but it's like, "Yo, 7 years ago, this wasn't my life."
Right.
And now here I am, I have to be sitting over after I go for work, and the one thing that I had to check myself was when I was in the moment and when I was in the world fighting for my life, I had all the time in the world. And then sometimes when, things are delayed and things are backed up, and I'm like, "What? No, look at my watch. I got things to do, like, hurry it up." And I had to check myself and say, "Margaret, when you still need patience. Like, life doesn't stop just because your life has now begun again. Like, I have to still focus on me, and there's nothing that's more important than me." Um, and I think that those are the things that I've had to learn in my last couple of years. But cancer, no joke. But I think when people think about breast cancer, they think it's only about the breast, right? And so I tell you that I can't have kids right now. I'm menopausal. I get hot flashes. Um, I think people don't know the impacts of how the treatment, the chemo, and depending on what type of cancer you had, dictates, the life that you live post-cancer, post-treatment. And so oftentimes I have to tell people like, "Hey, also don't squeeze my arm. Like, I don't want to get lymphedema." But there's certain things you got to tell people. Like people, people just give you a little hit on your arm. You're like, "Ow." But it's like I feel my arm, but I don't feel my arm, right? I feel my chest, but I don't feel my chest. But I also can't you can't just hit me because I may get, swollen arms, and I'm trying not to because they had to take all my lymph nodes from under both armpits, right? Remove everything, and so it's like people don't know things, and so every day it's kinda like a or it's more so like in the middle of me talking to my teachers, and I'm, like, sweating, my forehead is glistening, and people
Right.
are like, "What?" They'll be like, "Oh, I got a hot flash." They'd be like, "You're too young for a hot flash." And I
Yeah.
say, "No." And that's it, that's all. Sometimes I engage, and sometimes I say, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, just in hearing, there's a couple things that you're saying. Number one is the idea that, like, you know, there's all this life after cancer that people don't really talk about, that you have to navigate. And then the second layer to that is that it's a lifelong journey that you're on now, right? That, like, after this diagnosis, after this, and after the diagnosis and your treatment, because at one point you had your surgery, you were going to radiation 5 days a week. From the last time I remember us talking,
Forgot about
you
rate.
had your breast turned black. You ended up with a staph infection after getting your second shot. One implant had to get removed. After the treatment, you were diagnosed, as you just highlighted, with cardiomyopathy. And then at the point that I talked to you around last year, you had a hernia, you had fibroids, one sitting on your lower back, one sitting on the hernia. You were wearing a binder to build strength in your arms. And your uterus at the time was being removed, which that's is that did that happen?
I did not.
It did not happen, and but you're still in menopause, so your body is still responding almost like it could have been, right? And so I think it's so important what you're highlighting, just about all these elements of, like, you might get cancer as one thing, but there's all this subsequent care that you're going to need, and then there's the trajectory of time that you're going to need that care that makes this such a unique experience. And then I do just want to highlight, I know you said you identify as
I
yourself,
knew you was gonna bring it back. I knew you was gonna bring
because I just want to, because if there's somebody that's listening to this
it. Mhm.
that is may be struggling with the identity piece as you think about like removing your breast, like how much of that is actually tied up in your own sense of self. And I wanted to know if you had anything to offer. But if that's not, we don't have to go there.
I
But
could I know I could definitely go there. So I'm gonna tell you this, right? Like I'm in a transitional phase. I don't know where I'm at right now. I could tell you I go to church religiously. I may not drink a wine in my wine glass right now. But I also think about when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was in a relationship with a young lady, right? I think about but I was in a relationship at the peak or the prime of, people transitioning from, genders. And I think I'm a person and that I love my womanhood. I can tell you that I love it, right? Although I am glad that I don't get my period right now, like I'm happy about that, right? But the hot flashes, they can go. Um,
right.
but and if I told you like, oh yeah, if you met me 5 years ago, I'd have been like, girl, I don't want no kids. But when someone tells you you can't do something, and I'm a person that does, like, I am the person who will always go against the grain. So when you tell me I can't do something, that makes me feel away. And so when I found out that, if I go undergo this treatment, that there's a possibility that I would not be able to have kids, that was really discouraging. And then knowing that now I, because of one of the types of cancers that I had, it's getting in the way of me being able to do if I wanted kids, now I can't, right? And so for me, I'm just like, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, and the cancer ain't gonna stop me. So that's the one thing. I think about who I was when I got cancer and who I became when I was working through it. And I'm a person, I'm a person. I'm human, but I never limit myself to titles, to roles, to gender, to sexualities. That's just not who I am. But I think about the relationship that I was in was not a great relationship, right? I think about they were the person that found me and supported me at the beginning of my treatment, and for that I will forever be grateful for them. But I think throughout that time, I got to know who I was, right? And a lot of the things, I think one doctor I spoke to, not even a doctor I spoke to in regards to my health, but I was just in a conversation with a person who's a doctor, and they were saying that certain genes activate, and that's based off of trauma, that's based off experiences, that's based off of life, and then certain, they don't activate. And so for me, it was trying to identify what caused my sickness to actually activate, right? Because you have the question of like, nah, normally people think cancer is hereditary, like it comes through the family, but that's not what it is. Cancer is a sickness because based on circumstance, based on conditions that folks live in. And it sounds crazy when you say it out loud because you're like, this is hell. But it's based on the conditions. So what things are you experiencing as a young person that you are harboring? What are some things that you've never gotten over? What are some things that are still traumatic to you, right? And so the funny or the most beautiful thing about me going to meet my holistic doctor was being confronted with the things that I never got over, right? I never got over the death of my cousin. I never got over that. Like I was legit walking around with a lot of animosity to God, right? To just people that I interacted with. It was just this facade that I had put up. And so not knowing how certain experiences actually impact your life, impact your health, um, and it's not as philosophical, it's not as like hyper spiritual, it's not those things, it's just the reality. If you just harbor animosity and things and you don't work through it, it causes you to get sick. That's it. And so it's like the food you eat is important, the people you have around you is important, the things that you intake on a daily basis is important. And so when I think about my health and my recovery, part of it is the chemo treatment, part of it is just me finding myself and who I am. Part of me is, working through and sitting, with things that I don't like about myself, and so, yeah. But even if I talked about my sexuality, it was been like, "Well, Margaret, well, why did you choose this route and not this route?" I think there's a lot of different things, so I think people make opinions and assumptions based off of how I look, and I think that was the one thing that really was impacting me more to get reconstructive surgery, but we can talk about that another time. But for me, it was just like, no, I don't want to be misgendered because I appreciate my womanhood, but I know if I don't, like even now, I got fake cleavage. I think, I got fake cleavage, but I think about what is my real reason for wanting to be identified as a woman and not be misgendered. But that was one thing that I was just like, don't do that. And and the funny thing about it, I'll tell you the story and I'll let it be, is that after I got my reconstructive surgery, I was walking through the hospital and this old guy was just like, "Sir," and I was so mad. I was like, "Bro, I just got my new titties, and you're misgendering me." But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's like certain things just don't matter. But it's like in my head, for me, it was something different.
yeah. No, I think that's really helpful. And and just as a follow up to that, you said, what is my reason for wanting this to be like important, and for me wanting to hold on to my woman identity? Is you being born a woman, is that not reason enough to accept that part of your desire to be identified as a woman?
I think it is, but because, and I know this is being recorded, but because it is what's in right now, I didn't want to be a part of what was in, right? I am who I am. And, sometimes when people be like, Miss Jenner, be like, well, did you know I had breast cancer? And then, make people feel uncomfortable. So I'm fine with that all the time. But the deeper and the deeper rooted things that are in me is just like, I love who I am.
Hmm.
And I think I identified more with my womanhood as being a person who has struggled with breast cancer. And then for the moment to when I want to decide, do I keep my breast? Do I just add some breast? Like I could have just been done and just like cut it off, leave me be. And that would have been it. But I think, my family also was like, don't cut off your breast. God will heal you. And I'm like, okay, God also provided these doctors. So I'm going to follow the doctor's rule. You know what I mean? What they got their guidance. But I think for me, I think it was more personal because I think the time that we're in right now, I think things are in. And I didn't wanna be a person, and it could have been easy, right?
You
And
want
I
to
don't
make
know
sure it's for you.
I did it for me, and I think, some of my friends would be like, "What, girl, you don't need no boobs." And right now, I don't got no nipples, so my boobs are all, like, fake, but there's real tissue. And I think it's just like, that is just for me. Regardless of how I show up in this world, regardless of what I wear when I go from this world, I think that is just for me. And I think some people don't know how to take that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing and for just being open and so vulnerable and so transparent with what you're experiencing and what you have experienced, and just that internal dialogue. I think that, I think it's just so important. You get a diagnosis like breast cancer or cancer in general, and you just probably want to binge other people's experiences. Like, am I going to be okay? Right. And so I think the layers that you've been able to share just tonight, or just in this conversation today, has been, it's just really powerful stuff. I want to ask you one more thing before we log off. Somebody's listening to this right now who was recently diagnosed with breast cancer or has been fighting breast cancer for some time. What are you telling this individual who might hear who might be under your voice right now?
Imma tell them, "Go girl, you got it." Imma tell you to also, if you're a person of color, go to a place where you don't see people of color. I'm gonna tell you also, if the doctor is giving you options, go to another doctor. You want a doctor with answers, not with options. Um, and depending on the age in which you are at, where your diagnosis, was shared with you, if you are young, if the doctor is not trying to preserve your youthfulness, go to another doctor. If you are older and the doctor is providing you with options, I think you would pick the one that is best, but also ensuring that your health is number one priority. And sometimes surgery is the only option. I think anything that requires you to change your life in a quick manner of time, matter of time, it's probably not always the best option. But I think also I would also say pray, right? I think you gotta have a team. I think for me, when I first found out about my cancer, I kept everything a secret because I was so scared. I was so scared to share what I was going through because it caused me to be vulnerable, and oftentimes I was found or looked to as a strong person, and so I felt like this highlighted the weakness of mine, and because I didn't have an answer. Um, but I say create find a team of people who are there to support you, and it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be transparent with how you're feeling. It's okay to be raw, because that's the only way that you can overcome. And like I tell anybody that I come in contact with now is just like the cancer is not gonna beat you. I think I have my own affirmations of people. I say like, "I will live, I will not die. I will live, I will not die." I think those are the things that I say to people because I think there's so much power in words. And I think where I was willing to die because of other things that didn't had nothing to do with my health. I was willing to die because I felt like I needed to hold on to a relationship. I was willing to die because I felt like I needed to hold on to my career. And while all my stories are like things worked out for me, I know that everybody has the same story, but just know that you will live and not die. And that God got you. Like, I don't know if y'all believe in Jesus, but believe in the Lord, but God got you, and I think about nothing that you experience is for your own good, right? Everything is for the good of others, and so being able to sit and talk to people and talk to for me personally, like, former students or students of mine, and I think the last thing I'm gonna say is that and over the course of the last year, I found out a student had cancer. They had thyroid cancer. And the student came to my forefront because the teacher was just like, "Oh, Margaret, you may have something to share." This is a student I had since middle school, but was like a junior, and now is a senior in high school now, and had thyroid cancer. And it was a time where I was telling her she was going to the wrong hospital. I was like, "Nah, go to Dana-Farber. They're gonna treat you because parents are from Haiti, don't have a has a they have a language barrier, and so, there's already mistreatment and prejudice there, so I was like, "Go to this place, go to this place," so advocated, got the girl to go to, this new hospital, underwent surgery, surgery was successful, and that was in her senior year. I'm no longer at the school that I was at, so I don't get to see her as often, but we do text, and then I found out recently, they have colorectal cancer. Right? The cancer spread. And, and this was a girl who would come to my office, hysterical about her thyroid. I don't even know thyroids. Thyroids are like in your throat. But like she was having some panic attacks about like how, you know, having something with you your whole entire life and then something being removed. And I was like, girl, you don't even see your thyroid, But in thinking about it, it was just like, that's exactly how I felt. And so just being able to sit her in my office, and oftentimes we would just sit and pray. Or I would tell her to repeat after me, like, you will live, you will not die. And, you know, they created a sense of peace for her. But then to hear about this other, the cancer growing or the cancer had already spread, that's discouraging because I don't know anything about that. But it's the same effort of like, I will live and I will not die. Um, not being able to be that person for her anymore, but I'm still here. Um, knowing that she has a good doctor and good care, and that there's always a pathway forward, and that's what I feel like folks need to understand with cancer, there's always a pathway forward. And sometimes when you hear the word cancer, you think of death, and death is not it. Your life will never be the same. People need to know that, but if you go through it and you get through it, then your destiny in life is to share it, to be able to impact someone else's life. And I think that that's what I've always shared with that young lady.
Yeah. I love that. And I know I said that was my last question, but this series is my last question. Tell us what you're doing now. It might be some Bennett Bells listening to this. So like, what's she up to now? Like, so you've gone through
What
and
am
are
I
going
listening?
through the after joint, the aftercare, the after management of the big thing that has happened over the past few years. What are you doing now, to give people a little idea of what to look forward to after their treatment?
Oh, so I can't tell you. They say don't tell you all your people's secrets, but I work with young people. I think I'm always as of right now, I have people who have since my illness was shared, they are experiencing their form of cancers that they're experiencing. So I'm often a person who just is a beacon of hope, but a pillar of like resource. I tell people, advocate. It's an industry. It's like if you don't like the chicken that you're being served at a restaurant, it's the same. It's the same energy. If you don't like the service you're being given at a hospital, then go elsewhere. Um, so I advocate for folks, and I talk to folks about their advocacy for their health. Um, and I'm working on a business. Margaret Gregory wants to be a storyteller. Ultimately, I also want to be a
You
person.
are a storyteller. Margaret Gregory is a
I
storyteller.
am a storyteller. I
Spend a whole
I,
hour talking about your story right now.
I remember. I remember. I don't even remember what I was gonna say, but I just remember. Going through this whole experience and not understanding the why behind it, right? Not understanding the why. And I remember going through to chemo treatment and feeling like I'm not a person who's about self, but I'm a person who's probably a little too vain, right? And so losing my eyebrows. I'm gonna keep telling you that. If you know anything about Margaret lost her eyebrows. It was the worst time of her life. Like eyebrows, eyelashes, that was the worst time. And so I think about people who are undergoing treatment, people who are undergoing surgeries, and I think about, what made me feel good when I was going for treatment. I always told myself, and this is my leadership story when I talk to my staff, I tell them like I grew up with my mom saying, "Oh, iron your clothes, making sure you had a crease in your pants." And so when I went for chemo treatment, it was more of like, let me make sure that I look good, that I look the part. And what part? I don't know. I was just sitting there getting like treatment for like 3, 4 hours, but I felt good within myself. And so what I think about is for young people or people who are experiencing cancer for them to feel good about themselves. And I'm gonna say this last thing, right? So I'm at a new school, right? I'm a new school. I shared with my team that I'm a breast cancer survivor. So many teachers, so many folks that I work with currently have the same story or undergoing the same story or have some situation that's going on. May not be a cancer diagnosis, but they're going through like, I don't know, the ebbs and flows. Perhaps it's cancer, perhaps it's not. Mastectomy, double mastectomy, maybe not. Or you have to go to do your mammogram when they squeeze your titty really tight. That's the worst pain ever. Don't wish it on anybody. And so I had a parent who came to me and was upset because the child missed their bus. It was totally wrong. But we ended up connecting. He was like, "Oh, I'm just about to get my port placed in." And I was like, "Oh, I just got my port removed. Underwent treatment, has a different type of cancer." And then one day, grandmother picked the son up from school, and mom was like really sad because dad underwent the treatment for the first time, didn't go well. And I became so emotional because I'm like, your son is so amazing, right? And then it's like you have a dad who's really just trying to make it, but then is diagnosed with something. And then here you are, not healthy enough to undergo the treatment. And so when I saw the grandmother pick up her grandson from school, it was just like the son didn't know what was happening. Son tells me he's taking care of his father. And it's like, dang, not every story is like as beautiful as mine was, because mine seems easy. Right? But then when you see other people and when you interact, when I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I had a pour, I still have my scar." You can see it right here where they put it. Like, I got scars all over my body, and I think about I don't know, but then when you see it at real life and people not working, and things not working in people's favors, it's like, "Dang, what can I do to help? What can I do to support?" And so, while I'm okay, I do know that part of my work is to ensure that people know that life happens and I have to be flexible, but I'm always willing to step in whenever I can.
Thank you so much for your experience, y'all. This is Margaret Gregory. We'll clap it up.
See my new
So
pedicure, y'all. I
excited
love my
for all the,
manicure. Nice.
what you say?
Manicure. I just gotta look nice.
I love your manicure. I love that color too. That's one of my favorite nail colors. But no, I really appreciate your time, your energy, you recounting your entire experience. And I just know that this is, and we're gonna have more. I know that this story, your story in particular, is gonna help so many other people. And again, friends, we are in the month of October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and for Black women, especially all women, it's a really important awareness to have, but especially for Black women who are disproportionately impacted by breast cancer. Um, if you like this content and content similar to this, where we tell human stories of passion, trauma, triumph, and resilience, I encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe, share, and save. That's the part they don't add. Like,
Same.
comment, subscribe, share it. If you're on social media, save the post, and it boosts our posts in the algorithm so more people can get this story and the impact of Margaret's story. And so with that, thank you all for tuning in. Margaret, Maggie, big love to you always.
All the love to you.
You know, I love you so much. I thank Bennett College for bringing us together.
I love Bennett College for bringing us together. Real Sisters is actually the
Yeah.
it's just the thing. I feel like everybody I met at Bennett are the realists.
Yeah. And you know, they talk about sisterhood all the time at Bennett. I was like so tired of hearing sisterhood, sisterhood. I'm like, I don't want to hear nothing else about the sisterhood. Okay. Nothing else. But
The funny thing is that we embraced it because everybody will see the sisterhood, but not everybody embraces it, and that's what makes us Bennett Bells.
it's true. It's very true. Sisterhood, and looking back as a full grown woman now, like I understand how sisterhood could be intimidating for a lot of women who have not been in circles of other supportive, you know,
But
women.
imagine this: two young girls coming from different walks of life, destined to break generational cycles, were able to embrace the sisterhood. That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is. Amen and Ashe. She had us whip up a glass before we started. Cheers.
No, I didn't.
As I've evolved from my humble beginnings, I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of rooms. The more people I've met, the more stories I've learned. Stories of passion, trauma, triumph, and resilience. These are the stories that inspire us, that remind us of the human spirit. We can all learn from the untold stories in each of us, regardless of where you come from. And now, I'm excited to share these stories with you. This is EPEC Conversations.